Hi, this is Mr. Mullaney. I'm talking to you today about the anti-slavery movement. Technically, it's called the abolitionist movement, but we're going to incorporate one other thing into it, Liberia. We'll get to that in a minute. This is one of my favorite lessons in American history, United States history, because we're talking about people who took a stand that was wildly unpopular. A lot of these people engaged in activities that were unquestionably criminal. They were completely against the law, and they were doing it to free people from slavery. This is as you cannot get as good a cause as this. This is the kind of thing where if you look back and you found out that some of your ancestors were involved in this, you could not be any prouder to be related to these people. So this is a very, very important lesson. It's people doing things that are criminal, that are socially, you can be ostracized for society at this time for forcibly arguing against slavery. You want to talk about people doing the right thing at a very, very high cost. It's this lesson right here. Very, very inspiring to me. Okay. Abolitionist movement. So abolition means ending slavery. Abolishing anything means ending it. So it starts with Mennonites and Quakers in the 1700s, and their goal is emancipation, the freeing of the slaves. So one of the first ways this kind of movement takes place is the American Colonization Society, the idea of let's take slaves, let's take African Americans, and America is a very hard place for African Americans. Why don't we bring them back where they came, where their ancestors came, Africa? And so the idea was we're going to start a colony there of African Americans. However, most African Americans thought this was pretty insulting. Why can't America just accommodate them and treat them with dignity as opposed to, oh, we have to leave here? And hey, we're American just like you are. So it didn't really do well. However, and this is Liberia on the Wikipedia map. Okay, that it's a small country on the west coast of Africa. And then I got another one on Google Maps. What the heck, in case you want to see it more than once. So Liberia, it's an independent nation today. It's had a lot of strife. The history of Liberia is very interesting. Lots of strife over the years, including in the 20th century. But its capital is named Monrovia. This was all taking place under the presidency of James Monroe. And the flag is actually, it looks very much like the American flag. So there are some remnants of that. All right, so we've learned about, and we watched a number of videos in class about Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, two of the prominent abolitionists. William Lloyd Garrison was a radical abolitionist. He starts it's a weekly anti-slavery newspaper called The Liberator. He starts that in 1831. Andrew Jackson hasn't even been reelected yet, so this is starting. The Liberator is a paper that in the South, you can get arrested for distributing it. It's censored, all right? It's burned in the streets rather than delivered to people. So it was very, very controversial at the time. The Liberator actually ends its publication in 1865 after the passage of the 13th Amendment outlawing slavery. Frederick Douglass, former slave. He's a prominent writer, prominent publisher. He gets involved in the women's suffrage movement as well. Very, very important figure in this. And so we watched some videos about it, about things that expand his horizons, effects he has on America, why William Lloyd Garrison was involved and why he took it personally. And then we get to the Underground Railroad, which it sounds like it's the New York City subway or the Broad Street line or Market Frankford line in Philadelphia, a railroad underground. Here's the thing. This had nothing to do with going beneath the surface of the earth, and it had nothing to do with trains. This is a network of escape routes to provide protection and transportation for free slaves fleeing north to freedom. All right. So the railroad is paths that the African Americans traveled, and the conductors, to take some train terminology, were the men and women who acted as their guides. The word underground is used in that it was carried out in secret. This is not a public thing. It's carried out in secret, and something that we've learned about historically. And again, this is the kind of thing where if you found out that a relative was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, risked life and limb to help others, you would just be so proud of them. I love this lesson because it shows you that people can do the right thing even under the absolute worst circumstances. All right, there's some artwork of the Underground Railroad depicting scenes of helping fugitive slaves, escaping slaves. So a lot of the roots were in kind of the Midwest, the modern Midwest, because the swamps of the Southeast were not hospitable to this. And we'll see this here. If you look at a map, Ohio is a real big part of the Underground Railroad. However, look at this, Philadelphia, big hub of the Underground Railroad. And there was some use of boats, as you can see, but the Midwest was a big part of the Underground Railroad. And one of its leaders was Harriet Tubman. And right now, there is a campaign underway to replace Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. Now, first and foremost, let me just suggest to you, the bank war, the pet banks leading to the Panic of 1837. Andrew Jackson probably should not be on money just because of his fiscal policies alone. Forget the controversy about how he treated Native Americans, although that's very important. Putting him on money, as I've told the class, is like making the Super Bowl trophy the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl trophy. You don't take something like, he's bad at fiscal policy, so why would you put money? Why would you put him on money? Anyway, so Harriet Tubman is one of the 4 women who is being proposed as a possible replacement for Jackson on the 20s. Now, this is just a movement right now. Who knows if this will take place? But there is a group called Women on 20s. You should check it out. Trying to make a case that Jackson should be removed and women should replace him. So Harriet Tubman is one of these candidates, and she is a very prominent figure in United States history. She's a former slave, so she's someone who escaped slavery herself. However, she goes back into the South to help others escape. Imagine that. You got free and you go back to where you were a captive slave to help people. She is nicknamed the Black Moses. We watched a video about her. And then lastly, resistance to abolitionism. You have to understand abolitionism is a small fringe group. The idea that slavery should be outlawed completely, 100% abolished, is thought to be kind of radical at this time. It's distasteful. People don't like it. And that's in the North and the South. All right. Viewed as a radical idea. The merchants in the North say, stop messing with the South. They're our trading partners. Additionally, Northerners typically oppose slavery, but the idea that free slaves would come up north where they would probably be more welcome than where they had been held as slaves, that was not welcome. Oh no, they're going to come here and compete with us for jobs and live in our communities. That was not welcome. The North was just as racist as the South. Now, of course, in the South, you're talking about the economy of the South. So there was the movement was detested. All right. And what happened is the Southern congressman passed a gag rule prohibiting anti-slavery petitions from being read aloud or acted upon in the House. And lastly, we ended this with Douglass and Garrison. So the abolitionist movement itself had divisions. Douglass and Garrison have a falling out. Women and the role of women. Women aren't allowed to speak at some anti-slavery abolitionist movement meetings. So there were divisions within the abolitionist movement that reflected divisions in society. So that's it. The anti-slavery movement. Thanks for watching. One of the greatest lessons of American history. Really inspiring to see people against tremendous odds fight a fight for something that was so right.